Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Fable F1 podcast. The whole gang is back together. I'm joined by Joshua Fletcher, Callum McAvoy, and Callum Owen for another 45 minutes or so of Formula One chat. There's lots to cover. We're going to be looking back at Imola and some of our predictions that we made and seeing how we got on. We've got some Formula One news as well. The fact that Miami has been confirmed for 2022. We also heard the sound of the new cars as well in the onboard track, in the onboard kind of video that we saw of the car going around the track. We've also got to talk about sprint qualifying, which has come in this week. We know that Silverstone is going to be first to host the sprint qualifying event. We're then going to have a look at Portugal, which is coming up this weekend. We're returning there for the second year running after a long time away from Portugal. So lots to get on with. So let's get straight into it. Joshua and Callum McAvoy, we're going to talk to you first about your predictions that you made from Imola. We'll go to you first, Callum. You put Hamilton to win the race with Verstappen second, and so did you, Joshua. I actually got it right. I'm sitting here looking very smug because I said Verstappen, Hamilton. Callum, just kind of your overall thoughts on the race and how your predictions went.
I mean, it's a hollow victory because it's either going to be Hamilton or Verstappen winning. So, it's a 50-50 split. I was way wrong on my third place finisher, though. I had Fernando Alonso, who finished 10th. So I was way wrong on that. But I do claim the high ground here. My wild prediction was Nikita Mazepin would finish the race, which he did. He was 2 laps down, though. So, but, a finish is a finish. So I claim victory there at least.
Yeah, just before we came on, I listened back to last time and saw that you remember that you said that, and I was like, he's got that one right. But yeah, Stroll as well, you said would finish in the top 5, and that one didn't quite work out. He came 8th, so just a very average weekend for them. Joshua, the same for you. You were fairly close on yours. You obviously got Hamilton and Verstappen the wrong way around, and then you put Leclerc third, and he finished 4th. So reaction to your predictions, please.
Yeah, I mean, as Callum said, it's sort of, if you say one, the other one's going to be there or thereabouts. So it's shot in the dark. I thought Lewis would do it in the wet, but just got beaten to the corner, didn't he? And then from then on, it just happens to lose. Yeah, I mean, I said Leclerc third. I don't think any of us will complain with the Norris podium. I mean, I was close enough with 4th. So a decent weekend for our predictions. Started off strong, so it can only go downhill.
And Callum Owen, you weren't with us last time. It's been a long time since we've had a chance to speak to you about Formula One. What have you made of the first 2 kind of opening rounds of the season? And there's quite a few questions I could ask you, but what have you made overall of the first few rounds, and especially that Red Bull, Mercedes, Hamilton, Verstappen battle?
Well, exactly that. I'm really, I don't know, happy is the word, but that we've got what seems to be a proper title fight this year. Verstappen and Red Bull look incredibly strong, and Hamilton and the Mercedes, I think, would always be strong. And Imola was a fantastic race, and I think it just outlined how close those 2 cars are. Verstappen got away at the start. Hamilton was coming back before he had his off, and then had a fantastic recovery drive. So I'm really optimistic that we're going to have just an incredible season.
And you've led me onto it perfectly there with the Hamilton Verstappen chat, because Callum, how good was it to see that turn 1 battle between the 2 of them, where they hit each other as well? Hamilton took a slight bit of damage, but it didn't seem to affect him too much. How good was it to see them properly going wheel to wheel rather than, Verstappen chasing Hamilton like it was in Bahrain?
This is what we wanted. This was the race that we've been, wishing for years, and as Callum Owen said, I hope this is the rest of the season now. It's just these 2 going at it, a proper test of skill. Obviously, rain is the great equalizer in motorsport, as we know. So this really was a test of man over machinery, and interesting to see Verstappen win. I didn't see that coming. Really thought Hamilton would win, but it was just quite something to see.
And we know that Hamilton has always kind of been he's always said that he tries to leave as much space as possible. And we know about Verstappen's aggression. And I liked how aggressive he was at just saying, no, you're not coming through, bye-bye. And then obviously Hamilton just completely held back the next time round. Joshua, for you, was it completely fair? I know you're a Hamilton fan, so there might be some silver twinted glasses for this. Was it fair dues, or should Verstappen maybe have picked up a penalty or something for that?
Oh no, it's completely fair. I think I've seen a couple of bits saying that Verstappen cut him off or initiated it, and no, it was just great racing. And Hamilton made a mistake. It's not like he was there and just chasing him down. He cost himself maybe a win with that mistake, and he admitted to it. And it was just great to see, and to go in to have two races with a point between two of the two best drivers on the grid this year can only be fantastic for the sport and for the fans. I mean, fair result in the end, wasn't it, really? And a bit of justice for Lando Norris. Only just going off in qualifying, putting it up there, and then coming back to take a podium is good to see.
Yeah, and Callum Owen, it was fantastic to see Lando back on the podium. What do you think in terms of Lando? Do you think that's something that he can maybe sustain and maybe pick up 4, 5, 6, 7 podiums this year, or do you think it could maybe be a one-off? What do you think?
I think 4, 5, 6 is probably a little ambitious, because the McLaren's shown it's an excellent car this year, which I'm happy that McLaren sort of considering my team. I'm very happy about that, and I think that many is optimistic, but I don't expect it to be a one-off. Norris at the minute looks to have the measure of Daniel Ricciardo, and I just think that's Ricciardo adapting to the car, and the McLaren looks to be slightly ahead of the Ferraris. However, at different tracks, we could see that change. So I do think when Bottas and Perez or any of the leading cars fail to make that third spot, we're going to see either a McLaren or a Ferrari join them. And at the minute, you'd say Lando Norris is best placed to be that person.
And Callum just mentioned there that the battle between Ricciardo and Norris. How long do we give Ricciardo to adapt to this McLaren car before we can kind of say, no, Ricciardo's better than Norris, or Norris is better than Ricciardo in this car?
I'd say give it the first 4 or 5 races, maybe. You've got to remember, Lando has grown up with McLaren in the same way that Hamilton did all those years ago. So yeah, of course, Ricciardo's going to be off to a slow start there. He's bounced around a lot of teams recently. So yeah, I'd give it 4 or 5 races, but yeah, it's a really good sign for Norris to be so far ahead of Ricciardo, because we all know what he's capable of. So.
And Joshua, you've made it no secret to us that you're a massive Lewis Hamilton fan. In Formula One, were you in floods of tears when he went off into that barrier? What happened?
I was more shocked than upset by it, I think. And after the weekend that Mercedes had, it was almost not predictable, but everything seemed to go wrong. I know he managed to bring it back, but you look at everything before that comeback from 9th up and the red flag. I don't know. I think he just went for it, and rain, wind, everything. He just misjudged it. It was a tight angle to go for anyway. But I mean, you don't become world champion by not taking risks. Didn't pay off, but he's still come and got second. I think he got fastest lap in the end as well. So he got the bonus point. He still leads the championship, and he's kept up that Mercedes run. But I think he'll be happy not to lose the race, but to have a proper challenger. He's not had a proper challenger since Rosberg in 2016 or so. So I think inside he'll be delighted that he's got someone who can actually compete with him.
And Callum Owen, I know we know how strong Lewis Hamilton is mentally, and he's spoken about that. But do you think maybe the fact that Verstappen is obviously so close to him this season, that I know it was so early on, but that could maybe starting to get into his head a little bit? Or do you think the conditions just got the better of him and it was just a rare one-off mistake?
Yeah, I think it was a slightly unnecessary risk, but he was catching up to Verstappen, and I think didn't want to lose any time with the back markers. As for Hamilton, mentally, he's been in world championship battles before, 2007, 8, 2014, 2016. You could even count 17 and 18 before Ferrari and Sebastian Vettel sort of fell off. So I don't think Hamilton's mentality needs to be questioned. I think when it gets down to it, Hamilton will be able to cope with the pressure, and I think it's his to lose and Verstappen's to win.
I think that's fair enough, to be fair. And, I think we maybe will see how strong mentally Lewis Hamilton is this year if he does, end up winning that battle, because Verstappen is going to say things about him in interviews, and I think he's going to play those mind games throughout the rest of the season to try and catch him out. I want to talk about a prediction that Joshua made that we didn't touch on at the start. He predicted George Russell to score points. Obviously, in 2020, he was on track to do that and binned it under the safety car. This year, he had that collision with Bottas. Callum McAvoy, what did you make of it? Was that completely Russell's fault? Was it Bottas's fault? Who was at fault on that one?
I'm going to go on Team Russell for this one. I think Bottas moved across, and I'm surprised that Martin Brundle and all the commentators on Sky didn't take sort of more note of this. You can clearly see Bottas moves across as Russell is going past. And obviously, that's what leads to the crash. I will admit Russell definitely did not handle the situation very well, going up to Bottas and sticking the middle finger up at him. I get why he did it, obviously heat of the moment and all that, but yeah, I think it was Bottas's fault. It was a racing incident, but 60-40 to Bottas, I guess.
And Joshua, you nodded in agreement there with Callum, but Callum, you didn't really seem to react. What did you make of it? Are you on the side that it was Russell's fault?
I think both Russell and Bottas have to take some blame. I think the way the straight in Imola goes, you do have to turn. Whether Bottas turned a bit too much, and I get Russell said at 300 kilometers an hour, the smallest movement can be massive, and I just think that's what led to it. I think if anything, it's a racing incident. Did they conduct themselves the best after? No. Does it really matter that they gave the finger and had words? Not particularly. I don't think anyone didn't like seeing it. So I think a racing incident is sort of just where it should be left.
I think I agree with you on that one. I think it's difficult because obviously Russell, dipped into the grass, which was obviously wet, which could have obviously thrown him off a little bit. And Bottas was also, why was he kind of on that wet side of the track? Obviously, he was in a quicker car, and that's probably one of the only places he could overtake there. But Joshua, what did you think of it? Were you on Team Russell as well, or were you like me and Callum potentially saying, yeah, it probably was a racing incident? They probably both were at fault.
You can see why the stewards didn't sort of look at it and penalise either of them. But I think we're split 2-2 here. The jolt from Bottas, as Russell put it, was clear to see, and I think the wet is a massive factor in that. But more importantly, I think it's a miracle that they're both out okay and neither driver behind them was affected by that. Because you look at the spin, the contact, the impact, that could have been a lot worse. You could have had 4 cars out of that race. You could have potentially had a lot of drivers injured. You knew straight away it was a red flag. Again, it's just a difficult one. It's passion from Russell, isn't it, to get out and slap his hand away. I don't know if Toto Wolff conducts it necessarily very well, sort of bringing in the reputation of other competitions and cars, and just let it be. Both drivers made a mistake. Just move on. No one was hurt. They neither was on for a points finish anyway. Bottas down in 8th or 9th at the time, whatever it was. Just move on, let it be. And I think Russell made no qualms that they're not friends. Doesn't impact his future with Mercedes team. So is what it is. But just shocking really that it's ended up like this.
For me, I quite like to see that. I quite like seeing Russell get out of the car and go, what are you doing? Sort of thing. I like to see that kind of passion. I think we're all football fans here, and we like to see our teams kind of doing that sort of thing, getting into opposition and confronting them about stuff. And I think it's the same in Formula One. You're not all there to, be friends with each other and handshake and go and drink coffee after the race in the paddock, all this sort of stuff. You're there because you're fighting against everybody, is a rival. So Callum McAvoy, what did you make of it? Do you think, how Mercedes handled it well? Obviously, you kind of touched on the fact that Russell didn't particularly handle it well, but what did you make of Toto Wolff's reaction to it?
Yeah, not handled well at all. I think that the whole thing got blown up because of the relationship Russell has to Mercedes and the whole, oh, is Russell going to take Bottas's seat next year? So I think that narrative really made it a bigger deal out of it than it really should have been. No, Mercedes didn't handle it very well. They should have just said, oh, George will learn from this. Bottas will take it on the chin, and that should have been the end of it. I feel they just escalated it beyond where it should have been.
And then moving on, another prediction that I made is I expected Tsunoda to challenge for a podium. Obviously, he had that crash in qualifying that, completely smashed up the back of his car. And then I think it was after the red flag restart, he spun on the first chicane after sort of gaining 10 places throughout the race. And then obviously finished, a lot lower down the order than maybe I expected him to. Do you think, Callum Owen, that maybe there's now AlphaTauri have a bit of an expectation on Tsunoda after doing so well in his first weekend, scoring points, or do you think they're still going to be like, no, it's okay, that's all right, you'll learn from these mistakes, that's part of being a young driver?
I think there's an expectation from the fans because we've seen what Pierre Gasly can do in that car. We know it's obviously a strong car this year, so I think there's an expectation from fans that he doesn't spin and end up out of the points or crashing qualifying. I think AlphaTauri will be realistic about it and understand it's his second race in an F1 car, and mistakes are maybe to be expected. I think it's more there'll be a fan expectation as opposed to a team one.
I mean, I really like Tsunoda, the way he conducts himself, the way he's so passionate already. I mean, remember when he got out of the medical car and just went straight through the back of the garage, did not speak to anyone, and because he was obviously so annoyed with himself. Joshua, moving to his teammate Pierre Gasly, you said that he would disappoint at the weekend. It's probably fair to say that he did, and both AlphaTauri cars did, and it won't be a weekend to remember for them.
Yeah, I think I'm not necessarily on the Gasly hype train that I've seen quite a lot, but I think Tsunoda made a mistake, whether that was all him, whereas the wind, like Norris attributed it to. I think Gasly would have wanted a better result, not necessarily win it like he's done before or push for a podium, but a lot higher than where he wanted. But it's still early in the season. There's still new cars to them. I know they've had some testing, but we never know. It's been a whole 2 seasons now. This season and last season have been so unpredictable with short testing, and I think everyone deserves 4 or 5 races just to acclimatise to their surroundings and the cars, and just let's see where we are at then. But I mean, Gasly will learn, he'll improve, and he'll have better outcomes than that. But that race was, as we've said, it was great for a fan, but there were some very interesting results.
I mean, I mentioned football earlier on, and I don't want to mention it too much because obviously this is a Formula One podcast. But again, we're all football fans. If our team loses the first 5 games of the season, we're not going, oh, we're getting relegated. And if we win the first 5, we're not saying, we're getting promoted or whatever. So it's the same with Formula One. You've got to give those 4 or 5 races to bed, and it's a 23 race season. And it was also something that we haven't mentioned yet. The first time we've seen these cars in the wet as well. They've not even driven them in the wet. They would have done it on sims, but it's impossible to kind of recreate kind of exact conditions and the speed that a track dries or how quickly it gets wet, how quickly puddles set on it, things like that. I think that's kind of everything in terms of Imola. Obviously, Perez had a very disappointing weekend for Red Bull after I predicted him on the podium. Just a number of errors throughout the weekend and especially in the race that cost him there. And we all know that how good Lewis Hamilton is, the way he recovered from that spin, from hitting the barrier. And we talked about that earlier. The first piece of news that's broken in the last, 2 weeks since Imola, it will be this weekend, was that we're going to Miami in 2022. And no, I'm not going to sing the song. I can't even remember who it's by. But Callum McAvoy, I assume you've seen the layout of the track around the stadium. What did you make of it? Just another, because to me it was another boring street circuit.
Well, first off, I think I speak on behalf of everyone. I'm extremely disappointed we're not getting the full rendition of Will Smith's Miami.
We'll get Joshua to just.
This is the only reason. This is the only reason I came on tonight, because I knew.
Welcome to Miami. That's all you get.
We got a bit. We'll get copyrighted if we do any more.
Yeah, boring street circuit. Did we expect anything different though at this stage? I don't know. Herman Tilt gets a lot of flack, and I think a lot of it is misplaced. I think that he's unfortunately F1 tells him like where the circuits are going to be and just make the best of it. And unfortunately, when you have a place like Miami, a great venue, don't get me wrong, you can't do a lot of the circuit. It's just going to be another boring flat. Let's have two long straights and a lot of twisty bits. Like there's not a lot he can do, and this is why so many people love Austin in Texas, because he was able to move the ground around and do what he wants. That's why you have so many elevation changes. Can't do that in Miami with a street circuit. So yeah, it's another Sochi Abu Dhabi ripoff, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think we can agree that it's just it didn't remind me of Sochi or Abu Dhabi, but it certainly has now. And it also, I was going to say, obviously nothing can recreate Monaco and come close to that. I don't think, in my opinion. But it reminded me of Baku. It reminded me of, I can't even think of what the other one is. There we go, Vietnam. The walls, a fairly wide track. Not really much room for error, but there never is on any street circuit. Anyway, it reminded me a bit of Singapore as well. And I think Callum, I think to me, I think it's just all come down to money. Miami is a big place that everybody knows in the world. Everybody's heard of Miami. Everybody's heard of Formula One and things like that. And I think it just comes down to money. I think. What do you think, Callum?
Well, I agree perfectly with what you said. It's with what Callum said. 2 long straights and a lot of corners. It's taken a lot of flack so far for similarities to Vietnam. And whilst we never raced there, obviously it was on the F1 game and there was countless onboard videos, and it never had a brilliant reaction. I don't think Miami will be any sort of different to that. As for money, F1's a money sport, and I think it's nothing shocking. I think as a location, Miami's great. As a street circuit around the stadium, it's not great, but it's money. And I don't know, it's a 10-year deal, so it's not going to be a one and done. We're going to have to make the best of it and hope it does produce decent racing.
Joshua, do you think maybe we could have just put the track inside the stadium, built an oval around the stadium, and had a bit of oval Formula One racing rather than just a boring flat street circuit?
I think if fans got to design F1 tracks, we'd make them a lot more exciting than quite a few of what we got on the calendar. But yeah, it's a money track, really. Every time you sort of go to the States, you put in an event in the States, it's for money. Almost somewhat surprised it's not in somewhere like New York or LA. I mean, a bit harder to do in places like that. Again, it's just, I don't want to say it's a boring race because we've got a year or so to wait until we sort of see cars on track and see what it feels like. But yeah, they'll pack it out. They'll have loads of fans there. The States love their motor racing. I mean, it would go down well over there. As for us, we're probably never going to experience it apart from on the telly. So yeah, disappointed in the sort of layout. I mean, you can't really do much when you've got a stadium sort of in the middle of your location for it. So disappointing, but we'll see. Hope, as I said before, hopefully we see some exciting racing and potential for it to evolve as we go on.
And the last 2 points on this, I just want to discuss with Callum Callum M first of all, is we were told that there were the article that announced it said there were 22 track designs that they came up with, or something like that. There were multiple track designs, and they obviously decided on this one as the best one. Do you think maybe it could have been an idea that they could have presented 4 or 5, simulated videos to fans, and we have a vote, or the teams vote, or the drivers vote, and try and work out that way rather than just putting this track out and everybody saying, "Oh, that's rubbish."
Actually, a great idea, which I'm sure would not work in the real world, sadly. Just because of what F1 fans are like, would probably choose the craziest one of the 4 options that we got, perhaps. Although that's not a bad bin now that you mention it. Yeah, that would have been a really cool idea, especially because there'll be fans out there, and maybe I'm thinking this because of all the stuff that's happened with football recently and the Super League and all that. But like, yeah, I think some fans are like, oh, well, the sport's being taken away from us because of blah 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 and money talks and all that. So yeah, an idea like that would have been pretty good actually. Yeah.
And then Calamo, we obviously in the video we heard one of the 2022 cars, probably the first time, or certainly the first time I heard one, and I had to turn my volume up quite high to actually be able to hear it. What did you make of the sound of the new cars? Especially the bit I didn't like was when they came into the braking zones. The downshifts just sounded horrendous. What do you think,
I
Callum?
mean, I'm not. I think a lot of F1 fans, and it's a lot of F1 fans that are maybe a little bit older than I am, are really concerned about car noise, just because they've lived through the era of V8s, V10s, V12s, and so long as it doesn't sound like Formula E, I'm fine, because I think they're horrible sounding. I think, but as F1 moves towards maybe engines that are more electric or more carbon neutral, when that's a big target of theirs, engine noise will go with it.
And Joshua, I think we could probably make a whole new podcast about the new zero emissions and carbon, things, and all that sort of scientific stuff that I've got no idea about. So we probably couldn't make a whole podcast. Does it concern you, that these cars are potentially getting quieter and quieter, or is it not really something that bothers you? Because for me, on the TV, when I hear these cars, I'm like, yeah, all right. But then I hear them in real life and I'm like, oh, they don't sound that bad. What do you think, Joshua?
Yeah, I think, as said, we're clearly heading for a more sustainable and kind of engine, more sustainable kind of sport. Lewis Hamilton's made no effort to sort of keep it traditional. He sort of go in that sort of direction, sort of almost spearheading that idea of making the sport better and better for the environment. Will we miss the sort of proper car noise and revving and everything that comes with it? Of course. But in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter as long as we still have high quality racing at high quality circuits in not equal cars, but cars that can compete with each other across the grid? If that comes at the expense of a bit of revs, I don't think anyone or any F1 fans are going to complain.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that one, and I think everybody else probably would as well. That's kind of with us, the two Callums as well. Moving on, the next piece of news, because we talked about that for quite a bit. So that's Miami. The next piece of news that came out this week that's as well caused a bit of controversy is sprint qualifying has been introduced. Obviously, there was a lot of talk about it at testing. We were being told pretty much every day that teams were meeting with the FIA to discuss this and how it was going to work. And the new format has been released. So if you haven't heard it and you're listening and have got no idea what sprint qualifying is, basically it's going to be a 100-kilometer race that will then set the grid for Sunday's Grand Prix. The way the weekend would work is that Friday morning we would still have our normal 1 hour practice one. Friday afternoon would then be a normal qualifying with our 3 qualifying sessions, 5 drivers getting knocked out in each, as it is now on a Saturday afternoon. Then Saturday morning we'd have practice 2. That would be another hour session. And then Saturday afternoon would be the sprint qualifying race. So it would be a 100-kilometer race, and wherever you finish the race, the sprint race, you then start in the normal Grand Prix on Sunday. So, for example, if Joshua was a Formula One driver and on Friday afternoon he qualified in 5th for the sprint, then finished in 2nd in the sprint race, he would then start 2nd on a Sunday afternoon. Callum M, what are your kind of reactions to this? Do you think it's just a complete waste of time and won't work?
Oh, I really wish it had been reverse grids. That would have been so much better. The way I see it is that it adds another race, whoop-de-doo. What's going to happen in that race is the fastest cars are going to finish at the front of the grid and the slowest are going to finish at the back. So no different to how normal qualifying works anyway. Reverse grids would have been so much better. If you watch any British touring cars like I do, when they do reverse grids, at least the top 10 get reversed, it's so much more entertaining to see. I don't mind them trying to change things up though. I kind of wish they had done it at the really crap circuits like Sochi or Abu Dhabi or Paul Ricard in France, but as I'm sure we'll discuss in a bit, they're not going to do that. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, but I'm a bit skeptical at the moment.
And Callum it's been confirmed that Silverstone are going to hold the first one of these. You're obviously going to be there, and I don't know if the other three of us may or may not be, but you're obviously going to be there. As a fan that's at the track, is all you want to see racing, or are you more concerned about seeing cars on track, on the limit in qualifying and practice? What are your kind of takes on it overall? And then, as a fan at the track, what do you prefer to see?
Because overall, I'm glad it's being tried, because there was a lot of calls for something along the lines of reverse grid or a sprint qualifying. So I'm glad it's being tried. I'm worried it could take away from the Grand Prix, seeing the cars race on Sunday. So I think that's yet to be determined whether it will or not. And I'm happy qualifying itself is being kept. I was worried that it might come at the expense of qualifying, and I think every F1 fan does want to see the cars on the limit. Honest. I mean, I'm glad it's being tried. I'm looking forward to seeing it. So I think, I'm happy it's happening. It has to be done though at circuits where you can overtake. Otherwise, you'll just get a procession for 100 kilometers, and no one wants to see that.
Joshua, before we go a bit deeper into it, your first initial reaction as well, please.
Yeah, I'm sort of glad we're sort of seeing something. Whether this is what fans wanted, I'm not sure. I've wanted sort of like a revamp of quali for a while, whether that comes in the form of reverse grid or sort of almost like sort of one shot, two shot. You give each car like a chance, and rather than knocking everyone out, some sort of change to it. But 100k sprint race, as has been said, you're just going to see the Red Bull and the Mercedes sprint off, and then midfield fight for it, and the Williams at the back. I mean, it's just a shorter race, and a chance for Formula One to charge fans even more money to go and see it, because you're seeing a race on a Saturday. So, I mean, that's going to be another, 20, 50 quid on the ticket price.
And you've all kind of raised valid points in terms of, Callum M, you said about reverse grids, and maybe potentially one idea was that we qualify as normal, and then reverse the top 10 for a sprint race, like, Formula 2 or whatever they do, and then go into Sunday's race with the actual grid or something like that. There's so much that's kind of come out of that in terms of the fact that, it could just reset the order, and surely the whole point of a normal qualifying is, seeing somebody crash out, like, seeing Perez, I don't know, crash out in Q1 and then come through the pack, on a Sunday. So there's a lot to definitely digest and talk about. Callum M, you mentioned reverse grids. Is there anything else that you think maybe we should be trying? Because I mean, this, like you said, it's good to see that we're trying things. This is the first time that we've obviously tried something since that dreadful qualifying format that we saw a couple of years ago, where we had this kind of countdown clock next to each driver, I think, wasn't it, where they were getting knocked out. But Callum M, what would you try if it was you, and you had to have a sprint race in there in some format?
Ooh, difficult. I mean, the only way that this kind of current format that they've picked works is that, like, Hamilton and Verstappen crash out on the first lap of the sprint race, then they both have to start at the back of the grid. That's the only way this works, is that someone near the front doesn't finish or whatever. I'd just do reverse grids. Honestly, I can't think of anything better. I know it's a bit boring to say, but like, just do a sprint race and then either have the top 10 reversed, or I think what they used to do in BTCC was they literally draw a number out of a hat. So if it was like 16, then the top 16 would be reversed and something like that.
Oh, okay.
So just like completely spice it up. It's anything I can think to do, to be perfectly honest.
And Callum, do you think maybe last year would have been a better year to try this? With kind of, the situation that we had with the pandemic. We only, had a short, a large amount of races in a short period of time, but it wasn't, the most convincing Formula One season we've ever seen. Obviously, this is like a full calendar. We're getting these 2-week gaps between races that we see. Do you think maybe we're trying this a little bit too late, or do you think it's okay to just throw it in now?
hadn't thought about that, and now that you say it, it sounds like a better idea. But I'd imagine with all the issues around COVID and the logistics of having a worldwide, no, nearly worldwide calendar, I think last year they would have struggled to do it just because there were better, well, not better things, but bigger things that needed prioritizing. So is it coming too late? No. Would it have been better last year? Yes.
And then I think we can probably all agree that we don't want to go towards this kind of Formula 2 and Formula 3 format because, you know, they're unique for having their practice and qualifying on a Friday. You usually get a fairly entertaining sprint/feature race. I know the Formula 3 races both at the same distance. So I think we can agree that we don't really want to go towards that. We want to keep it with this full Grand Prix on a Sunday. Joshua, the last thing on these sprint races, do you think a race on a Saturday could take away from maybe that Sunday, you know, build up? You get, you know, your races in the morning, your feature races, support series is what I meant to say there. And then obviously in the afternoon, you get this kind of gap and you know, the drivers come around on the trucks, all this thing. Do you think it could take away the hype from Grand Prix Sunday, Joshua?
Yes, is the short answer. I think the point is that you wait 2 weeks a lot of the time, maybe 3, and you see the cars on grids, you sort of practice Friday, practice Saturday, then the sort of excitement starts to build. You see qualifying, anything can happen. I know we've seen Carlos Sainz qualify 15th, 14th, whatever it was, and then we get an exciting main event on the Sunday. And to have a sort of another event on the Saturday, it sort of takes the joy out of it. We'll all still watch it. It's not like we'll switch off. We'll all still watch it. The fact they know the fans will watch it, they can charge more. I mean, they get more viewers, but there's a little bit that takes away from the sort of special nature of it, almost.
Yeah, and the other thing I kind of thought of there is it could bring more viewers to Formula One if we've got these shorter races. People, you know, the things that my mates level at me that don't like Formula One is, why would you want to sit and watch 20 cars drive around in circles for an hour and a half a day? Whereas you might only be doing that for 45 minutes to an hour, you know, on a sprint race. And people may find it a little bit more entertaining if it's shorter and condensed. But like we said, you know, we probably have a midfield battle with the front runners just pulling off. I think that's kind of everything that we can talk about in terms of the sprint races. And I'm sure we'll come back and have a conversation about how it's worked in July or whenever Silverstone is. It also looks like Monza, we're going to be trying it there as well as in Interlagos in Brazil. So, you know, we'll have conversations again about sprint qualifying, you know, once they've actually happened. The other piece of news this week, which we don't kind of need to discuss too much, is that Turkey has now been replaced. Turkey is now replacing Canada. Canada, a track that I quite like driving. It's obviously not the best to kind of race on, but I quite like driving around it whenever I played it on the game. And Turkey, I don't see as that much of an exciting track. Obviously, we saw a lot of excitement there last year in terms of you know, the way Hamilton won the race and Stroll, you know, put it on pole, that sort of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But this weekend we go to Portugal. We're back in Portimao for the first time since 2020. Callum McAvoy, what did you make of last year's race, and are you glad to be back there again for 2021?
I didn't think much of the race, to be perfectly honest, but I love the circuit. Pretty much like a roller coaster, I think is how people were describing it. Yeah, not a particularly exciting race. Obviously, a special one. I think Hamilton broke his broke the win record of 92 wins as well, which was quite unique. But no, I'm glad to be going back there. You know, it's always great to see F1 going to places that it hasn't really been to before. Obviously, there have been Portuguese Grand Prix, but this is only the second one at Portimao, which is quite interesting. So yeah, looking forward to it.
And Callum, your kind of overall thoughts on the track? Have you ever, you know, driven it on a game or anything? What do you think of the track as a whole?
No, I've only ever experienced it through watching last year's race, which I think had big moments, such as Hamilton's win, Raikkonen's start, and the collision between Norris and Stroll. I think the race was okay last year, so I'm not displeased with going back. I think should be a good race. I think it'll help that it'll be competitive this year. It wasn't Hamilton sort of stormed off last year and that was that. So I think with competitive cars, it should be a great race.
Mm-hmm. And Joshua, what do you think is going to happen in terms of, let's get into our predictions, the podium. I think that we're going to be going back to a normal podium this weekend. I think we're going to see Verstappen at the top again. I think that he's going to be followed by the two Mercedes in Hamilton and Bottas. Joshua, do you see anything different from that happening? Obviously, with Imola, we knew that there was going to be rain, so we could kind of mix our predictions up a little bit. But I think this is going to be a standard nice weekend in terms of European weather. So what are your thoughts on this weekend, Joshua?
I'm not convinced by Bottas this season, to be perfectly honest. I mean, unless there's something seriously wrong with his car, you shouldn't be putting the Mercedes in that midfield, and lower midfield as well. Again, I think Hamilton and Verstappen will fight it out. Maybe a surprise podium, but I don't mean someone like Giovinazzi. You'll see what maybe one of the Mercs. No, not Mercs. A McLaren's or the Ferraris up there. Yeah, I'm not convinced by Bottas. And I think Ricciardo is going to outperform Norris this week. I just think the experience has got to kick in at some point, and I don't think McLaren have one or two drivers. So it'll be hard unless something's going really wrong. He won't be given team orders again. I hope.
And
anyway.
Callum M, what do you see ahead of this weekend in terms of your top three and how the race will go?
I'm playing devil's advocate this week. Sergio Perez is going to win this Grand Prix. I'm calling it now. He won't, will he? Though. No. But we can dream. Sergio Perez to win. Yeah, I'd love to see Lando on the podium again, but it's going to be. I'm going to go a Red Bull 1-2, Max Verstappen second, and Lewis Hamilton will round out the podium places. So.
And Callum O, we agreed with each other quite a lot in the predictions episode when you were last on. Are you agreeing with my top three of Verstappen, Hamilton, Bottas, or have you gone for something slightly different?
Maybe. I wrote it down at the start, and I keep looking at Max and Lewis, and I can't decide whether I want to swap them or not, but I'll stick with it. I'll go Valtteri Bottas in third, Lewis Hamilton second, with Max Verstappen taking consecutive wins.
Good man. And Joshua, your kind of wild prediction for the weekend, what's going to happen that nobody can see coming, that you can win $2,000 on if you bet on it?
I think Lance Stroll is going to finish top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Check it out there. Why not? Stroll's going to come top 5. Just cause a bit of an upset. And again, I think Sergio Perez will disappoint. I can't see him getting anywhere near the top 3. Sorry, Callum.
What do you make of that, Callum?
Live a little, mate. Come on. Dreams, man.
A man can dream. Callum as well, then your kind of wild prediction. Mazepin finishing the race is not allowed. Maybe Mazepin not spinning.
Oh, that's impossible. No, I like to dream, but that's too far. There are some dreams that are achievable. Okay. I've gone with George Russell will score points for Williams. They've been showing good progress, both him and Latifi into Q2 in Imola. So now is the time. He's finally going to get points. Williams are finally going to score points for the first time in nearly 2 years. I hope, anyway. I hope.
And then Callum, before we go to mine, let's hear what you think is going to happen this weekend in terms of your wild prediction, please.
I think maybe I've got the least wild prediction, so I'll give you two to balance it out. I'll go for Esteban Ocon to outqualify Fernando Alonso, and also Sergio Perez to finish 5th with either a McLaren or a Ferrari ahead of him.
I like it. Well, Callum, we've talked about me dreaming. I'm definitely dreaming this weekend. Sebastian Vettel, it's his time. It's Aston Martin's time. They've had a dreadful start to the season. Sebastian Vettel will score points and will challenge for the podium. What do we think of that? Anyone?
I think you're really backing Sebastian Vettel again. I like him. I don't think he's there yet. I don't think the Aston Martin car is there yet. I want to see him do well though. I'd like to see him get points.
Good stuff. Well, if he finishes on the
like
podium, it'll be a miracle, I think.
like I said, there are dreams and then there are unachievable dreams that matter. And I'm sorry, but okay, score points. I'll give you that. Challenge for the podium. You're clutching straws there, mate. Sorry.
And Joshua, anything you want to add on kind of anyone else's predictions that they've made, or your thoughts on those?
I can't agree with that Vettel shout. I really can't. I'm sorry. I'm not. I know we joke about sort of your the affinity for Vettel on this podcast, but he looks shocking. I'm not even sure it's the Aston. He doesn't look up for it. I thought that at the end of last season as well. He just doesn't look like he has the love for it anymore, which is sad to see that sort of love for draining from a 4-time world champion. But I mean, you stand in the best chance of winning the most money if you bet on Vettel to come fourth. I'm not as convinced.
I'm 18 now. I mean, I'm not encouraging betting, but I've turned 18 this month, so you never know. You never know. That's probably another podcast we could have in itself in terms of talking about Sebastian Vettel as well. So yeah, thanks very much to the three of you for joining us. Thank you to everybody that's listened along, that's watching as well. It's been fantastic, and hopefully you've all enjoyed it. Another good laugh, as well as a bit of serious Formula One chat in there as well. So thank you very much to everyone who's listened. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit the like button on the video, hit subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, make sure you give us a follow on your podcast platform and leave us those 5-star reviews and just help us branch out as much as possible. Tell your mates, tell them to tell their mates, all that sort of traditional stuff that you have to say at the end of these kind of things. So yeah, thanks to the three of you for joining me. Thank you very much to everyone that's listening. Make sure you're checking out all of our work and everybody in the Vable office on Vable.com /motorsports, I think is the correct link. And obviously all the articles will be posted on the F1 Vable Twitter, which is @F1 Vable. So yeah, that's it for this one. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back ahead of the next race. I mean, I've got no idea when that is, but we'll be back before then. So thanks very much to everyone for listening. And until next time, we'll see you all later. Bye-bye.